Welcome to this week's episode of Next Level Play Therapy. I took a couple of weeks off for the Christmas holidays, so today is my first day back for the live stream, or if you're listening on the podcast, the time of this recording is right after the holidays. So we are in the new year, 2025. Welcome to 2025. My mouth's not working. 2020, again, not working. 2025. So welcome to this week's episode. Today, I want to talk about using play therapy with teens. This comes up a lot in the play therapy community. It's something we talk about in Play Therapy Academy. Play Therapy Academy is my online, I call it like my VIP, really hands-on play therapy program to teach child and adolescent therapists how to effectively and confidently use play therapy. So if you think about it, working with adolescents in play therapy can feel a little confusing, because how many of you, when you think of play therapy, you think, oh, it's for kids, not for teenagers, right? And you can actually use play therapy with adolescents. And when you use play therapy with adolescents, then there are a few things that you want to keep in mind when you're doing that. So today I'm going to review some things that you definitely want to keep in mind, really some of the core things that are needed in order to make play therapy effective. And then also, if you're working with adolescents, then what are some things you want to keep in mind using play therapy with adolescents? So if you're listening, watching on the live stream, I would love to know who's here. What is your name? What population are you working with? Are you using play therapy with adolescents? If so, what modality are you using? What are your questions about using play therapy with adolescents? So welcome. Join us today. I would love to know who's here. If you're watching the replay for the live stream, feel free to comment. I would also love to know who's watching. What population are you working with? Where are you working? How are you using play therapy? Are you using play therapy with adolescents? And for those of you listening to the podcast, welcome as well. And I would love if you would leave a review for the podcast. It's always nice getting feedback to make sure that the topics are resonating with people and if they're useful. And I would love some feedback about that. And feel free, if you're watching the live stream, the replay, or listening to the podcast, please feel free to share this information with your colleagues and pass it along. So for today, some things that you want to think about. Today's topic is how to use play therapy with teens. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is case conceptualization. So what is case conceptualization? If you haven't listened to any of my previous live streams or videos or listened to the podcasts, case conceptualization is something I talk about a lot. I feel like case conceptualization is one of those core foundational skills that we need to have as clinicians. I think it's important when we're working with children and families as well. And I think there's a lot of, I'll say, misinformation, or maybe I'm going to call it misinformation about case conceptualization. Sometimes, I've heard people say, oh, nobody uses case conceptualization. Or in my model, like child-centered play therapy, we don't use case conceptualization. And I disagree. And I do use child-centered play therapy, and I do use case conceptualization. Your case conceptualization is going to vary based on your play therapy model. And case conceptualization is essentially, how are you figuring out what is at the root of the problem? And that's going to look different based on your play therapy theoretical model. So the way it looks with child-centered play therapy is going to look different than maybe the way that it looks with Adlerian play therapy, or maybe you're using an integrative play therapy approach. Your case conceptualization is going to be heavily influenced by that. The thing is, and I find this all the time, we talk about this a lot in Play Therapy Academy, as we kind of, in Play Therapy Academy, we actually, when you're doing your case presentation, we actually walk through that case conceptualization process, and then we kind of get feedback from the group about what's probably going on, because you can't really figure out what to do unless you really understand what's going on. Again, that's going to look a little different with child-centered play therapy, because it's it's completely a non-directive model, so you're following along. Again, it's going to be influenced in certain ways. When it comes to working with teenagers, then you want to make sure you're doing that initial assessment with either the teenager in the room, with the parents, or however it is you do your initial psychosocial assessment. And I definitely make sure you get parent input in there. Don't just skip parents and only get it from the adolescents, because you're not gonna get a full picture. The questions that you ask and the information that you gather are going to give you a sense of what's going on and what are the patterns sustaining it. In your case conceptualization, when you're working with adolescents, you are thinking about some of the developmental aspects of that as well. So you're thinking about challenges that adolescents encounter, like social pressures, emotion regulation, academic stressors, what's going on social media, what's going on with their peer relationships, what are some of the identity issues that they're struggling with. All of these are things you want to consider when you're gathering all of that information and trying to figure out where the teens may be getting stuck and what might be contributing to them getting stuck. So the other thing is, in your case conceptualization, you're going to want to engage parents as your allies in the treatment process. And to me, that starts with that initial psychosocial assessment, as you're gathering information and really trying to understand what it's like being in that family, what it's like being in that life for that teenager. And then you're using that information to engage, build trust, and identify what is it that they want to be different. You're engaging parents and you're explaining to them what's their role in the therapy process. When you're working with adolescents, what's that going to look like for the adolescents? And how are you engaging parents? Because parents are still the therapeutic agents of change. Adolescents can't create systemic change. You need parents involved, or whoever the caregivers are acting in that parental role. You need to build that partnership with them in order to facilitate that change. And that initial assessment is going to give you some information about where maybe some of this change needs to occur, and including with parents or whoever is acting in that caregiver role. So you can use that initial assessment to gather the information, use that to formulate your case conceptualization for the adolescent. You're including information in there about some of those developmental tasks of peer relationships. How are they doing in school? What kind of stressors they're experiencing in their peer relationships, or maybe even social media. We know social media is a big contributor to anxiety and depression. Also, how are all of those things influencing their beliefs about themselves, others, and relationships, and that identity formation? So you want to make sure that's a key thing to do in the beginning when you're working with adolescents. So from there, that takes us to that's kind of the foundational things you want to keep in mind when you're working with teenagers. Think about developmental things. And then the next thing is adapting your play therapy model for adolescents. So consider how the different play therapy models are going to guide your understanding and treatment, what you're doing in your play therapy sessions with adolescents. So for example, this may upset some child-centered play therapy people. It's not my intention. And I think it's challenging to use child-centered play therapy with adolescents. I think it can be done, and it's not my preferred way. So I use more of an integrative approach. I'll use child-centered play therapy exclusively when I'm working with young children. And then when I'm working with adolescents or like middle school and adolescents, I've pretty much shifted to more of a kind of integrative play therapy approach, using more kind of more of an attachment and neuroscience foundational lens, and then using that for rapport building and building safety and security, engaging parents, talking with them about how to approach adolescents and help their adolescent using an attachment and neuroscience lens. The interventions that I'm going to be using are going to be focused more on thinking about neuroscience and attachment. I'm looking at identity formation. I'm looking at co-regulation, regulation of emotions. How do attachment relationships influence identity formation, their beliefs about themselves, others, and relationships? That's kind of that internal working models concept. That's an attachment concept. I'm thinking about interpersonal neurobiology, that whole concept that we learn about from Daniel Siegel, and mentalization, which we've learned from Peter Fonagy and his colleagues. So kind of integrating that attachment framework, and then that's going to guide me through the change process. It's going to influence what I do with adolescents in the sessions. I'm going to tailor my interventions and the activities that I do based on that theoretical foundation, and thinking about developmentally, what are the typical things going on for adolescents? What are their kind of relationship needs, those attachment needs? And then I'm going to choose the play therapy activities that I'm going to do based on that. It's also going to influence my way of being in the play therapy session. So, for example, one of the reasons I shift over from a child-centered play therapy approach over to more of an integrative approach is the tracking that we do in child-centered play therapy gets the way in which we show up and do that tracking can be a little challenging when you are working with adolescents. And if you're using child-centered play therapy, then you can't do directive activities. And if I want to target some of those core beliefs that they have about themselves, if I want to target some of the like coping skills and understanding the body and how we experience things in the body. So some of that somatic thing, those somatic experiences, then I can't use child-centered play therapy for that because it's not directive. So people, you can use, just want to be clear, you can use child-centered play therapy with adolescents, and it is going to influence the way you address the issues in the sessions. So if that doesn't resonate with you as a therapist, then you're going to be using a different play therapy model, and you're going to be thinking about the adolescent tasks. And how is the play therapy model that you're going to use, how is that going to adapt with adolescents? Like, for example, Adlerian play therapy, I think is an easy shift to working with adolescents. I think you can use Gestalt play therapy with adolescents. I think there's a little easier shift there. And you're thinking about your play therapy model and how you're applying that play therapy model with that adolescent to address some of those developmental needs that they're working with. So the thing you need to think about when you're working with adolescents is, how does your play therapy model influence the way in which you interact with adolescents and the way in which you work with adolescents? What is it that you're going to be doing? How does your play therapy model guide you through each stage of the change process for adolescents? So for adolescents, your way of being in the play therapy session is going to matter just as much as it does with kids, with younger kids. With adolescents, the way that you interact with them is going to be different. The way that you're kind of processing what's going on with them is going to be a little different than younger kids. So it's important to think about what model you're using. For example, how are you using congruence and authenticity in your sessions with with adolescents? You want to make sure that you're being authentic, your authentic self. What is that going to look like? And what does your authentic self look like when you're applying that specific play therapy model, including if you're using an integrative approach? I think a lot of us use integrative approaches. So what play therapy model are you guys using? I would love to know that. You can post that in the comments. I would love to know what play therapy models you guys are using with adolescents. And the third thing that we want to think about is, and this is what sets play therapy apart from other treatment modalities. And I'm going to say even like your traditional talk therapy models. The thing that sets play therapy apart from other expressive arts models and other more traditional talk therapy models is how are you helping your clients access the therapeutic powers of play? I like using expressive arts in play therapy with adolescents. I'll be honest, I like using expressive arts with adults as well. So a lot of the strategy I use with adolescents when I'm using some of these more play therapy approaches, I'm going to use that with adults as well. When I had a full caseload and I worked with a lot of adults, I would pull out the sand tray. I would pull out the art supplies. We would do some poetry. And here and there, I would pull out an activity if I really wanted to bypass, if we were getting kind of stuck somewhere and they were kind of getting stuck in their cognitive areas and couldn't get deep down into some of the core unconscious things that were getting played out and setting them up for kind of failures, getting in the way of success, I would go to experiential. And so to me, the thing that we think about when we're doing play therapy with adolescents and adults is how are we helping our clients access those therapeutic powers of play? Because that's the key. The therapeutic powers of play, accessing those is what sets play therapy apart. So from a play therapy standpoint, we are creating that strong therapeutic relationship with our clients, helping them to access the therapeutic powers of play through the application of a theoretical model, because your theory model is going to influence what you do in the sessions and how you help them access those therapeutic powers of play. The therapeutic powers of play, like access to the unconscious, creative problem solving, some direct teaching and indirect teaching. We can use expressive arts to do that. So when I'm working with teenagers and adults, I am often going to be using expressive arts because we can use symbol, metaphor, creative expression to help access the unconscious emotions and thoughts. And it also provides a little, I would say, psychological safety if we stay in the metaphor. We use symbol to explore and process what's going on symbolically, so that eventually the goal would be that they would better understand what's going on and it would create some shifts for them. And you could teach them some skills for managing things differently. So some of the things that you can do when you're working with adolescents and using expressive arts, you can use art to explore emotions and thoughts. Like what would that emotion look like? If you're exploring thoughts, you can have them create. I like using like a dual portrait activity to help them understand. Like, one is, how do you think people see you? And then the other is an aspect, how do you see you? And that's that dual portrait, exploring self-concept. But when you're also exploring self-concept, you're exploring some of those cognitions and those belief systems about themselves, that whole identity formation, and how they see themselves navigating the world around them. You can use some art activities like that. You can use collage. You can use storytelling, journaling. I love using poetry. We'll use music. We'll look at lyrics of music, which I look at lyrics in music as kind of like poetry. So we'll look at that, meaning. You can use drama. You can use movement-based activities. All of these are things that you can use when you're thinking of the different interventions that you want to use. And these are ways that resonates with adolescents. Music resonates with most adolescents, not all of them. Looking at like art or Santre. I use Santre all the time. They can symbolically represent in the Santre, or symbolically represent with art. And then that said a whole idea of a picture is worth 1,000 words. That's going to give you an idea of how they are experiencing what's going on around them and how that impacts them, without having to use those cognitive portions of their brain to cognitively make sense of things which they don't necessarily understand. But we can get down to that unconscious level and use visual representation or storytelling or music or movement or drama to explore some of those things. So that is it for today. So, hey, Carla, how are you? Happy New Year, Carla. Um, so Carla says totally, and as neurological approximate, I'm not sure what that is. As neurological, yes, we are in a safe place to stay in the metaphor. Also, Carla is really big on the feminine and understanding, like on a biological and physiological level for females and menstrual cycle and how that influences daily living and internal experiences of things. Carla and I have had some conversations. She's got some really interesting things that she's doing in Mexico with her clients. So, yeah, Carla says approach. So we're in a safe place to stay in the metaphor and also look at some of those internal physiological things and how that's influencing, especially when you're talking about adolescents and adolescent females, and they are experiencing some of those biological changes inside their body and how that influences them for sure. So that is it for today. Let me just do a quick recap for what we talked about today. We talked about the importance of gathering that detailed psychosocial assessment, understanding some of those developmental challenges that are unique to adolescents, and involving parents in the process and how to do that, and how your case conceptualization really provides a foundational starting point to better understand what's going on with your clients. To do that, you have to gather that information to help you understand as that starting point. We're always in assessment mode. I'm a firm believer that we do that initial gathering of information, use that to do that initial case formulation, and then we're in assessment mode throughout the play therapy process and adjusting as we gather more information and understand all of that. But we're using that with our clinical decision making throughout the change process. That includes what are we going to do in the sessions and how are you going to engage parents, including when you're working with teenagers. You definitely want to make sure you're integrating parents somehow into that process and you are meeting with them regularly, because teenagers cannot be responsible for bringing about systemic change. If there are some shifts in that teenager's life that need to occur, parents still are active participants. It looks different than when you have a 5-year-old child or even 8 or a 9-year-old child. When they get into their adolescence, parents are shifting and growing just like their teenagers are. So you definitely want to make sure that you're understanding the developmental things that are going on with clients, your adolescent clients. When you're doing that case formulation, you're thinking about social media and how that's impacting social relationships. How are they engaging in their peer relationships? How is that going? How is that influencing their beliefs about themselves and others and relationships? What is the quality of their peer relationships? You're also thinking about those academic pressures. When they get into high school, they start getting concerned about, what's going to happen after high school. They start getting stressed out about college. Do they even want to go to college? What do they want to do after high school? Because They're gonna adolescence is preparation for launching into adulthood. So you definitely these are definitely things that are gonna come up with adolescence, and you're gonna be exploring some of those as you go along. And as you're doing it, it brings us to the second thing, which is how are you using your play therapy theoretical model with adolescents, and how are you adjusting it to your work with adolescents? Depending on your play therapy model, it's going to influence your way of being in the sessions. What are you saying? What are you not saying? How are you saying it? Child-centered play therapy is going to look very different with adolescents than it does with a 5-year-old. Very, very different. If you're using more of an integrative approach like I do, when I get to working with adolescents, I'm really looking at things more from an attachment and neurobiological standpoint. I'm thinking systemically about relationships in their family. How are they doing in their school with their peer relations? All these things going on in their environment, their relationship with parents. How are parents helping guide them through adolescence? This is usually a place where a lot of conflict comes up. How is your play therapy model going to help you address some of those things between the teenager and their parent? How are teenagers going to be using their parents for support? And what is that going to look like based on the theoretical model that you're using? What are you going to be doing in sessions with your clients when you're just working with the adolescents? What is it that you're doing in those sessions, and how are you doing it? What is your focus on? What are you targeting in there? These are all things that you want to think about when you are working with adolescents. Um, and then finally, the third thing that we talked about is helping your adolescent clients access the therapeutic powers of play using expressive arts. And when we're using expressive arts, we can use symbol and metaphor and creative expression to explore what's going on. You can bypass where teenagers, and I would say adults, get stuck sometimes trying to cognitively articulate what's going on rather than being able to access the unconscious or implicit experiences that are influencing their decision making, their responses, the way in which they see the world. You can use expressive arts through art, journaling, poetry, drama, music. I love using music and art and Santre with my adolescent clients. And how you do that is going to be influenced by your theory model, because your theory model is also going to influence how you make sense of what's going on, and how you are going to help your clients overcome whatever problem it is that's going on. And core, foundational to all of this, because I don't know that I talked about that too much today, but foundational to all of this is always creating that safe space for your clients to engage in the change process. We know they can't engage in the change process unless their social engagement circuits are activated, and those can only get activated when our clients feel safe. So the way in which you use your theory model influences the way in which you show up and your way of being in the play therapy session. But you also bring that therapeutic use of self, that authenticity that you bring. How are you showing up professionally, authentically, using your theory model, and what is that going to look like with adolescents to create that sense of safety in those play therapy sessions? So that is it for today. I talked a little bit about Play Therapy Academy. If you're interested, and 2025 is the year that you really want to hone your skills, take them to the next level, feel confident, kick imposter syndrome to the curb where you are second guessing yourself all the time. Am I doing this right? What am I supposed to be doing in these sessions? How the heck do I help my clients in play therapy using a theory model? I'm not really sure how to use this theory model. So if 2025 is the year that you want to change all of that and really feel confident to use play therapy, and for those of you who are interested in becoming a registered play therapist, if that's a goal that you have for 2025, then Play Therapy Academy can help. So Play Therapy Academy is my online play therapy consultation program, and we meet twice a month, do case presentations. So you get hands-on specific focus for you, getting ideas and help applying theory models, knowing what to do in the sessions, recognize, how do you tell if play therapy is actually working, if your clients are even making any progress, what are some activities or things you can do? How do you help parents engage? How do you help your clients engage? All of those things are what we talk about in our twice a month consultation programs. So even if it's not you presenting, getting the really specific directed focus, you're still learning from each other in the group. And you not only get my 30 plus years in the mental health field, you get all of the wisdom, resources, and insights from your colleagues who are also participating in the group meeting. So you get that community support. So you're not doing alone. You don't feel like you're doing it alone. You get support along the way to make sure that you are doing your best, not perfect, but doing your best and making a difference, because that's what we all want, right? We want to make a difference. And I feel like in the mental health field, especially when we're learning something new, it really is important to have a community of support to do that. And so the other thing with Play Therapy Academy is there are online courses in there. So you get the hands-on consultation in the meetings. You also get courses that are going to be part of that learning process. Some of these core foundational courses that are going to help you get a really strong foundation using play therapy. And then in the consultation groups, we kind of apply that. So you get the knowledge, and in the consultation groups, we kind of walk you through step by step how to do that. And then also having a community of support, to me, is really important to feel confident, to feel like you're not alone, to get ideas, to get support. So we have a group chat feature as well. So in between our consultation meetings, we have a group chat where we go in and ask questions, ask for resources, get ideas, get support along the way, so that you are not feeling like you're doing it alone. So if you're interested in Play Therapy Academy, I have 3 openings available. And when they're gone, and they won't open up again until somebody else is not in the group. So if you're interested, and it sounds like 2025 is your year and you want to take your play therapy skills to the next level, get rid of imposter syndrome, second guessing yourself, feeling anxious, did I do the right thing? Then pop over to my website at rhplaytherapytraining.com, and it'll be on the supervision page. So it'll be rhplaytherapy.com. Sorry, rhplaytherapytraining.com/courses. Check out Play Therapy Academy. We'll put a link in the comments. and schedule a free 30-minute video with me, and we'll hop on a video call and talk about what Play Therapy Academy is, what questions you have. Make sure it's a good fit for you. You can answer all of your get all of your questions about it answered, and see if it's a good fit for you. There's no obligation, so just schedule that free 30-minute video call. We're going to put the links in the comments below. So go ahead and schedule, and we'll see if it's a good fit for you before the spots fill up. So that's it for today. I will see you guys next week. Bye for now.